Marissa Vale poured red wine down Imani Reed's uniform. Daphne Rowe followed laughing as she tipped a second glass over the sealed folio in the maid's hands. Then both women grabbed for it. Imani moved once. She caught their wrists turned with their momentum and sent them face first into the crystal punch bowl. Ice and purple wine exploded across the table as 300 guests screamed. Before Marissa could lift her head, Helena Cross reached the microphone. Imani was certified at 9:27. Touching her just froze your entire deal. 3 days earlier. 3 days earlier, Wren House was quiet enough for Imani Reed to hear the brass service clock ticking above the housekeeping desk. She began every major event the same way: checking room releases, key logs, linen counts, and anything management might later claim nobody had noticed. The employee election box had been returned from the overnight security room and placed outside the staff dining hall for the final voting period. Imani almost walked past it. Then the silver tape across the lid caught the light. The left edge was smooth. The right carried a faint crease where adhesive had been lifted and pressed down again. She did not touch it. She photographed the lid from 4 angles, including the wall clock in the final image, then opened the handoff ledger. The seal recorded at 10:18 the previous night ended in 7:31. The one before her ended in 8:46. "Ruth," she called softly. The outgoing employee representative approached, but Imani raised one hand. "Please don't touch it yet." Ruth read the numbers and went pale. Security had signed the box in at 10:18. No later access appeared in the log. Imani sealed the ledger page inside a clear sleeve, emailed the photographs to her private archive, and requested the distribution record for replacement seals. The reply arrived 6 minutes later. Batch 846 had never been issued to security. Every strip in that batch had been delivered to Marissa Vale's event office. By noon, the East Terrace displayed the future Marissa Vale expected everyone to applaud. A glass model showed the staff residence replaced by private suites, a members-only garden, and a stone entrance marked Wren Heritage Club. Imani stood behind the service table while Marissa led Elliot and 2 investors around it. "The employee wing is underused," Marissa said. "Relocate 42 people, renovate once, and turn a liability into permanent revenue." Elliot studied the small print. The Preservation Trust approved. This Daphne Rowe answered first. "The vote closes tomorrow. Council prepared a preliminary authorization so the financing window stays open." Imani stepped forward. "Mr. Wren, the ballot seal was replaced overnight. The new batch came from the event office." Marissa smiled as if correcting a confused server. "Imani treats routine handling like a conspiracy." Elliot did not dismiss her, but the investors were waiting. "Send the photographs to legal. We'll review them after the gala rehearsal." "The authorization should wait," Imani said. Daphne placed a silver pen beside the document. "It transfers nothing. It only preserves the option." Elliot read the first page, hesitated, then signed. Daphne closed the folder before he could see the annex beneath it. As the group moved away, one page remained exposed for half a second. Beneath the Wren crest was the company receiving the property, Vale Row Residences, LLC. At 4:40 that afternoon, Imani received the voter export from the trust portal. She did not open it on a Wren House computer. Instead, she carried the encrypted drive to the records room, signed Ruth in as a witness, and compared the file against the current employment roster. The first column looked ordinary: names, badge numbers, departments, timestamps. The total at the bottom did not. 48, Ruth said. Imani turned the roster toward her. "Only 42 people are eligible. They checked every line twice. 6 badge numbers belong to former employees, a banquet captain dismissed 8 months earlier. 2 housekeepers who had resigned, a porter transferred to another property, and 2 temporary servers whose contracts had ended before nominations opened. Yet each inactive badge had cast a ballot between 2:11 and 2:16 that morning." All 6 votes supported Malcolm Vey, the facility's supervisor Marissa had publicly praised as practical. Imani printed the export, marked every inactive entry in pencil, and sealed the pages with Ruth's signature across the flap. Then she requested the original registration logs. The portal returned a warning: administrative review required. Someone had restricted access less than an hour after Imani reported the broken seal. Ruth stared at the screen. Who can do that? Imani checked the permissions list. 4 names appeared: Elliot Wren, Helena Cross, Daphne Rowe, and an administrator account labeled IR17, Imani Reed. Helena Cross arrived through the service entrance at 6:10 carrying no assistant and wearing the gray badge reserved for trust officers. Imani and Ruth met her in the archive room, where the printed voter export remained sealed. Helena photographed the flap, recorded both signatures, and opened it beneath the sealing camera. She read the 6 inactive badges, then compared the electronic totals with Ruth's handwritten issuance sheet. No announcement, she said. If the box was opened, whoever did it may still believe the paper count matches the portal. Under the trust charter, Helena could order an independent recount without Elliot's approval. She scheduled it for the following night after the gala staff briefing and directed Ruth to move the ballot box into a trust locker with 2 outside witnesses. Imani asked whether Marissa should be told the transfer was under review. Not yet, Helena replied. You reported evidence. You are not responsible for warning the person who may have created it. Before leaving, Helena restored read-only access to the registration logs. The 6 false votes had been entered in one session from 2:11 to 2:16 a.m. Each action carried the same credential, IR17. Imani opened her badge history. At 2:09, her account had authenticated inside the executive office, while her physical badge was recorded across town at the mandatory overnight safety seminar. Someone had not merely used her name. Someone had built the system to prove she was there. The next morning, Daphne Rowe appeared at the housekeeping desk with a temporary access request already bearing Marissa's signature. She said the council library would hold the engagement speech donor seating charts and a backup copy of Elliot's remarks until the gala. Imani read the form before reaching for the key log. Event council normally received entry to the outer reading room only. Daphne's request included the locked printer alcove, document scanner, trust cabinet corridor, and after-hours access through midnight. You don't need the archive passage to store a speech, Imani said. Daphne smiled without looking up from her phone. I need privacy, and Marissa needs this event to run without staff inventing delays. Imani marked the request pending and called facilities to verify the door profile. Daphne leaned closer. You're already under review for the vote irregularities. Refusing council's access may look like obstruction. Then the refusal should be documented, Imani replied. She copied the form, noted the time, and issued a badge limited to the reading room. 10 minutes later, the security console flashed an override. Daphne's badge had been expanded remotely to every zone listed on the original request. The approving credential belonged to Elliot's executive office. Imani opened the audit trail expecting an administrator's name. Instead, the authorization field displayed a single note: per owner instruction, no secondary review. At 8:35 that evening, Imani returned to the council corridor to confirm every temporary badge had been disabled. The library door stood closed, but the brass latch had not settled fully into its frame. She called security before touching it. While she waited, Daphne emerged from the side passage carrying a crystal glass filled with dark red wine. The reading room was too warm, she said. Marissa asked me to check the ventilation. Imani looked at the etched falcon on the glass. Wren Reserve was stored in a locked cabinet inside the library and would not be served to guests until the engagement toast. Your badge was authorized for documents, not the wine cabinet, Imani said. Daphne's smile tightened. I never entered the library. One of the servers handed this to me. Imani recorded the statement in the access log and asked the arriving guard to preserve the corridor footage. The printer alcove chimed behind the closed door. A status slip slid into the output tray visible through the glass panel. Imani photographed it before security opened the room. The machine had completed a 7-page document at 8:31 under user IR17. No paper remained in the tray, and the deletion queue had already been cleared. Daphne set her wine on a console and walked away, without signing the incident form. Imani enlarged the photograph. The job title was truncated, but the first words were readable: Employee Proxy Authorization, Imani Reed. The document reached Imani before breakfast, delivered by a junior clerk, who refused to say who had sent him. It was titled Employee Proxy Authorization and claimed she had transferred her vote, her objection rights, and her authority over the staff residents to Malcolm Vey. The signature at the bottom looked exact enough to fool anyone who had never watched her sign. Imani had. The final stroke of her surname rose too high, and the date sat closer to the line than she ever placed it. Ruth compared it with the nomination form. "They copied you." Imani shook her head. "Not from this." She opened her personnel file and found the source, a safety report from 3 years earlier, completed after she preserved original timesheets a manager had ordered destroyed. The signature on that report carried the same lifted final stroke, the same pressure break after the R, and a faint scanner shadow beneath the date. Daphne arrived while Helena was photographing both pages. "This settles the vote," she said. Imani authorized Malcolm to act for her. Helena asked who witnessed the signature. Daphne named a notary who was attending a conference in another state. Imani placed the 2 pages side by side. The forged signature included a tiny ink gap caused by a scratch on the old scanner glass. "A person copied my name," she said. "But a machine copied the damage." Helena sealed the authorization. Before the flap closed, Imani noticed the footer printed from the council library at 8:31 p.m. By midday, copies of Imani's old disciplinary report had appeared in 3 department inboxes. The summary accused her of removing payroll records without authorization and implied a history of retaliatory document handling. The missing pages told another story. 3 years earlier, a manager had ordered original timesheets destroyed after unpaid hours were found. Imani preserved them and sent both sets to an outside auditor. Employees recovered their wages, but the warning remained in her file. Marissa entered the executive salon holding only the summary. "This is the woman challenging the vote," she told Elliot. "She has done this before." Imani arrived with Helena and placed the complete report beside it. "I kept evidence management wanted erased. The copied signature on the proxy came from this file." Elliot read the auditor's note, then looked at Daphne, who released a sealed personnel record. Daphne claimed legal had received it during routine review. Helena reminded him the proxy, false votes, and altered seal now formed one inquiry. Beyond the doors, investors were gathering for rehearsal. Elliot closed the file. "Freeze the authorization. No announcement until we verify everything." Imani held his gaze. "Verification has started. Delay only protects the transaction." He glanced at the clock. "We handle this after the gala." As Marissa turned away, Imani saw the smile she tried to hide. Elliot had stopped the signature but given them one more night. The gala began beneath 200 candles and a ceiling of mirrored glass. At 9:18, Helena met Imani inside of the trust office and placed the recount certificate, ballot summary, and proxy challenge inside a waterproof folio. She sealed the zipper with a numbered strip signed across it, then asked Ruth and an outside auditor to witness the handoff. "Carry this directly to the stage at 9:30, Helena said. "Do not surrender it to Wren Staff Event Council or Elliot himself." Imani slipped the folio beneath her left arm and entered the ballroom through the service corridor. Guests turned only long enough to see a maid crossing between champagne towers. Marissa noticed more. She left the investor line and stepped into Imani's path beside the crystal punch table. Daphne joined her with 2 glasses of red wine. "Give me the packet," Marissa said, keeping her smile fixed for nearby cameras. Imani stopped beyond arm's reach. "It belongs to the Preservation Trust." "This is my engagement," Marissa replied. "Nothing is announced in this room without my approval." Daphne reached for the sealed zipper. Imani moved the folio behind her back. Please step away. The orchestra continued, but the nearest conversations died. Marissa's smile disappeared. You were told this inquiry waits until tomorrow. Helena did not agree. Across the ballroom, the stage clock changed to 9:27. Marissa glanced toward Helena, approaching the microphone, then lifted her wineglass over Imani's white uniform. Marissa poured first. Red wine struck Imani's shoulder and spread across her white uniform while nearby guests gasped. Daphne laughed, lifted her glass and emptied it over the sealed folio. The liquid rolled off the waterproof cover without reaching the pages. Now hand it over, Daphne said. Both women lunged at once, Marissa for Imani's arm, Daphne for the packet behind her back. Imani did not strike them. She caught each wrist, shifted 1 foot, and turned with the force they had already committed. Their balance vanished. Marissa and Daphne pitched forward together into the crystal punch bowl. Ice fruit and purple wine burst across the table as the bowl rocked, but did not break. 300 guests cried out. Imani released them immediately and stepped away, still holding the folio. Do not touch the uniform, the glasses, or the table, she told security. Marissa lifted her dripping face. She attacked us. Helena reached the microphone before Elliot crossed the ballroom. Imani Reed was certified as employee representative at 9:27 p.m. under Section 9. Interference with her or trust records activates an automatic retaliation hold. Daphne froze beside the bowl. Helena raised the signed certificate. The staff property transfer is suspended. Every related account authorization and device is now preserved. Elliot stopped beside the overturned table. The deal he had delayed investigating had just been frozen by the 2 women he trusted to complete it. Security closed the ballroom doors while Helena established a temporary evidence station beneath the stage camera. Imani removed her stained apron without letting the fabric fold against itself. Ruth placed it flat inside a garment sleeve, marked the first red stain over the right shoulder and the darker splash across the front, then sealed the zipper with 2 witnesses signing the strip. The folio followed. Its numbered seal remained intact, and every page inside was dry. A server identified Marissa's glass from the guest table. Another recovered Daphne's beside the punch bowl. Both were bagged separately before anyone wiped the stems. Marissa stood wrapped in a linen cloth, insisting the first pour had been a harmless joke and that Imani had responded with violence. 3 phone videos showed otherwise. Marissa blocked the path, poured deliberately, then reached for Imani's arm. Daphne claimed she had only copied Marissa in surprise. A 4th recording caught her aiming directly at the folio before grabbing for it. Elliot watched each clip without speaking. No one leaves with a device, Helena said. No footage is deleted, cropped, or sent to event council. Daphne's expression changed at the last phrase. Imani gave her statement in 6 sentences, including when she caught their wrists and when she released them. Then the trust officer lifted the 2 evidence bags toward the light. Marissa's wine was bright ruby. Daphne's was almost black. Before midnight, Helena's contracted conservator compared samples from the apron, both glasses, the punch bowl, and the locked library decanter. Marissa's stain matched the Cabernet served at the guest tables. The darker stain and residue inside Daphne's glass matched Ren Reserve, a limited blend opened only in the council library. The punch contained neither wine. Daphne's claim that a server handed her the glass collapsed when every service tray was checked against the banquet inventory. Elliot ordered the library cabinet opened. 1 decanter was missing exactly 1 pour, and its access seal had been replaced with strip 846, the same batch found on the ballot box. Daphne said Marissa had given her the glass outside the ballroom. Marissa answered at once, I never touched that bottle. Helena separated them before either could revise the story. Under magnification, the evidence technician found a pale fiber fixed beneath dried wine at the base of Daphne's glass. It was not linen or napkin paper. The fiber contained blue security threads and a faint line of black toner. Imani recognized the stock used for trust authorizations. The technician removed it, sealed it, and aligned the torn edge with a missing corner on the forged proxy. It matched. Daphne had carried the false authorization close enough to her wine for the paper to tear against the stem. Then Helena checked the decanter log. The cabinet had been opened at 8:28 p.m., 3 minutes before the proxy printed. At 7:15 the next morning, Helena's digital auditor opened a forensic copy of the trust portal, while Imani, Ruth, and Elliot watched from separate sides of the conference table. The 6 inactive badges were only the visible fraud. Beneath the final tally, 8 valid ballots carried 2 histories. The choice first recorded by the employee and a second choice written minutes later. Every original vote named Imani. Every replacement named Malcolm Vey. The changes occurred inside one privileged session from 2:11 to 2:16 a.m. At 2:14 that session disabled the registration logs, created the IR-17 administrator profile, and attached Imani's name to the activity. That account did not exist before the edits, the auditor said. It was built as the explanation. Ruth produced the paper issuance sheet proving each affected employee had received 1 ballot. Helena ordered the portal removed from Wren Control and preserved by an outside firm. Elliot asked whether Daphne's library badge could have opened the session. The auditor shook his head. A badge grants a door. This required an enrolled executive device and its stored certificate. He projected the device record onto the wall. The machine had connected from Wren House, used Elliot's authorization token, and carried the asset name EW Tablet 01. Elliot stared at it. That is my tablet. Imani looked toward Daphne's empty chair. The system did not merely point toward Elliot's office, it pointed toward Elliot himself. At 9:00, Ruth brought the paper ballot box into the trust room with 2 outside witnesses. Helena photographed seal 846, cut it without disturbing the adhesive, and removed 42 folded ballots one at a time. 6 electronic votes had no paper counterpart, 8 more contradicted the portal. On paper, each named Imani Reed. Ruth read every choice aloud while the auditor entered it into an offline ledger. The final count gave Imani 27 votes, Malcolm Vey 11, and 4 abstentions. No proxy was required. Imani had won outright. Daphne's lawyer argued the box could have been altered after collection. Ruth answered by producing the ballot issuance register and the ultraviolet test pen used when each sheet was released. 1 ballot carried a broken crescent beneath the Wren crest made when the pen skipped over a fold. The same crescent appeared in a photograph taken by its voter before the ballot entered the box. Its paper vote named Imani. The portal later changed it to Malcolm at 2:13 a.m. Helena sealed the originals and asked Elliot when he had last used EW Tablet 01. Yesterday morning, he said. I left it charging in my office. Security checked the executive inventory. The tablet had been removed at 1:58 a.m. and returned at 2:22. The overnight checkout line did not carry Elliot's signature. It carried Daphne Rowe's. Daphne denied signing the tablet log. Her attorney called the entry an imitation created after the fraud was discovered. Helena sealed the original book and requested every camera angle covering the executive corridor. The main feed showed Elliot entering his office at 11:46 p.m., leaving at 12:03 and never returning before sunrise. At 1:57 the image shifted. His office door vanished behind a silver vase of white lilies positioned so precisely that only the handle was blocked. For 25 minutes the footage showed flowers and empty carpet. At 2:23 the vase moved back. Security confirmed the feed had not been edited. Someone had rotated the camera by hand from the service alcove. Its access reader recorded no badge because the audit function had been disabled under the same owner-level instruction used to expand Daphne's library privileges. Elliot studied the checkout sheet. That signature is not mine, but the authority behind it is. Weeks earlier, he had approved Daphne as an emergency delegate without limiting which executive devices she could remove. Imani did not let him soften the fact. She used the access you gave her. The absence of oversight is still part of the chain. Helena requested the gala photographer's untouched archive. One photograph had been taken in the corridor at 2:06 a.m., while the flowers faced the camera. Its thumbnail showed a woman in silver beside Elliot's office door. The photographer delivered the original memory card under seal. Its 2:06 a.m. frame was sharper than the preview. Daphne stood outside Elliot's office in the silver rehearsal dress she later wore at the gala. Tablet 01 tucked beneath her arm. The next image, taken 11 seconds later, caught her turning toward the service alcove where the camera controls were housed. Metadata confirmed neither file had been edited. Daphne's attorney stopped calling the checkout signature impossible and began calling the tablet removal authorized. Helena answered that authorization to carry a device was not authorization to create false votes. Then the band leader entered with a small recorder. During setup, the ballroom microphones had fed into a backup unit that ran continuously, including the corridor beside the punch table. At 9:25 p.m., Marissa's voice said, "Soak the packet. She can't deliver what she can't read." Daphne replied, "The cover is sealed." Marissa answered, "Then make her fight for it." The recording continued after the women were separated. In the service hall, Daphne hissed, "You said Elliot would never check the annex." Marissa's response was quieter but clear. "He signed the first page. That was all we needed." Elliot removed his engagement ring and placed it on the evidence table. Imani did not look at it. Helena replayed Daphne's sentence once more. The annex was no longer merely suspicious. It was the part of the deal they had expected Elliot never to read. Helena separated the annex from Elliot's authorization and reviewed it page by page. Page 1 described a financing option. The hidden schedules transferred management of the staff residence to Vale Row Residences LLC for 30 years, with an automatic purchase right after 90 days. 42 residents would receive relocation notices after the gala. The company registry listed 2 nominee directors, but its operating agreement revealed the beneficiaries. Marissa controlled 60% through Vale Image Holdings. Daphne held 15% plus a legal fee triggered when Elliot's signature released the deposit. The remaining shares belonged to investors invited to the engagement toast. "You were announcing your own acquisition as his renovation," Imani said. Marissa called the structure standard and insisted employees would receive assistance. Ruth placed the housing schedule beside her. It allowed 14 days to leave deducted relocation costs from final wages and classified anyone who objected as an unauthorized occupant. Elliot read the clause twice. "I never approve this." Helena turned to the signature page. His signature was genuine. The annex beneath it was not the version his office had archived. Its history showed a replacement at 12:41 a.m., 83 minutes after he signed. Then the auditor opened the payment schedule. A non-refundable deposit had already been released to Vale Row Residences, and the receiving account was controlled by Daphne. By afternoon, the trust's financial examiner had reconstructed the payment path. Elliot's signature on the preliminary authorization was real, and the banking system had treated it as approval to release the first deposit. What changed afterward was the annex, the beneficiary account, and the schedule describing the staff residence as vacant investment property. Daphne argued that Elliot's signature made the transfer valid. Helena answered, "A genuine signature does not legalize a substituted agreement." Then she turned to Elliot. "Did you read every page before signing?" He looked at Imani, then at the document. "No." The room stayed silent. He admitted he had accepted Daphne's description, ignored Imani's request to delay, and chosen the gala timeline over verification. "I did not create the fraud," he said, "but I made it possible to move under my name." Imani did not comfort him. Responsibility begins before the evidence becomes public. The examiner traced the deposit from Wren Hospitality to Vale Row Residences, then through 2 consulting accounts. One payment covered Daphne's overdue private loan. Another moved into a holding company controlled by Marissa. The final transfer had been scheduled for that morning, but the retaliation hold stopped it. Helena asked how much remained recoverable. The examiner rotated his screen. Nearly half the deposit had already left the country through an account opened 11 days before the engagement. Within hours, Marissa's publicist released the abbreviated disciplinary report to investors' department heads and 3 reporters. The message called Imani a repeat offender with a history of removing confidential records and claimed the election dispute was retaliation after Malcolm V's expected victory. It omitted the recovered wages and the auditor who had validated the timesheets. By lunch, employees were being asked whether they had coordinated with Imani. 2 supervisors warned their teams that supporting her could jeopardize the staff residence while the transfer remained frozen. A banquet server withdrew her statement. A porter asked Ruth to remove his name from the witness list. Imani read the messages without responding publicly. "They are not trying to prove I lied," she told Helena. "They are teaching everyone what happens if they confirm I told the truth." Helena preserved every email and ordered Wren management to stop contacting voters. Elliot issued the instruction, but the damage had already moved beyond his authority. Daphne's filing argued that Imani's old warning justified suspending her as employee representative before the hearing. Imani requested the complete disciplinary chain who drafted the accusation, who approved it, and who refused to remove it after the wage recovery. The archived approval page arrived that evening. The final signature belonged to Conrad Pike, the compliance consultant now working for Daphne Rowe. The complete disciplinary file arrived from off-site storage the next morning. It contained what Marissa's release had removed: the order to shred the original timesheets, Imani's refusal, the courier receipt proving she sent copies to an outside auditor, and the notice returning unpaid wages to 31 employees. Conrad Pike had signed the warning after the audit proved Imani correct. His handwritten note said, "Retention outside management channels creates unacceptable precedent." Helena placed it beside Daphne's petition to suspend Imani. The new filing used nearly identical language: preservation outside approved channels creates an unacceptable governance precedent. Conrad joined by video and called the repetition coincidence. The trust examiner displayed invoices showing Daphne paid him for personnel risk strategy 6 days before the engagement. One attachment listed Imani's old warning as leverage if she challenged the transfer. Elliot asked why the record remained active after the wages were restored. Conrad said management wanted future reviewers to understand her pattern. Imani looked into the camera. "The pattern is that I keep originals when someone tells me to destroy them." Helena voided the warning and added Conrad's invoices to the fraud inquiry. Then the examiner opened the attachment's final page. It contained a press statement drafted before the gala describing Imani as violent after a confrontation that had not yet happened. The independent hearing opened without Wren executives controlling the room, the witnesses, or the order of evidence. Marissa testified first. She called the wine a humiliating mistake caused by pressure and blamed Daphne for turning it into an attempt to seize the folio. Daphne answered that Marissa had planned the confrontation, chosen the punch table, and ordered her to make Imani lose control. Neither woman apologized to Imani. Marissa said she regretted how the moment looked. Daphne said she regretted trusting Marissa's assurance that Elliot would protect them. Helena asked one question of each. What do you regret doing to Imani Reed? Marissa spoke about the engagement, the investors, and the ruined transfer. Daphne spoke about her license, her debt, and the recording. The answer never came. Elliot testified next and did not ask to be separated from responsibility. He admitted signing without reading, granting unchecked delegate access, and postponing review after Imani warned him twice. "Their fraud used my authority," he said. "My delay gave it time." Imani listened without expression. When invited to describe the humiliation, she placed the sealed apron on the evidence table instead. "Regret after losing power is not remorse," she said. "So let the record show what they feared losing and what they never mentioned." Helena presented the evidence in the order it had been created, not the order Marissa preferred to explain it. First came Seal 846 on the ballot box. Then 42 eligible employees against 48 electronic votes, followed by the paper count proving Imani had won. The forged proxy came next, with the scanner defect copied from her old safety report and the library footer stamped 8:31 p.m. Helena placed Daphne's Wren Reserve glass beside the torn proxy corner, then displayed the raw photograph of Daphne carrying Elliot's tablet at 2:06 a.m. The band recorder supplied the final link, soak the packet, followed by the admission that Elliot would never read the annex. Bank records showed the deposit paying Daphne's debt and moving into Marissa's holding company. Neither attorney could separate the wine from the fraud anymore. The panel voided the transfer, preserved the staff residence, and referred Marissa Daphne Conrad Pike and the altered payment chain for legal and professional review. Malcolm Vey's electronic result was annulled without accusing him of participation. Then Helena issued the final finding: Imani's defensive movement had used no more force than necessary to release two simultaneous grabs. Marissa looked toward Elliot as if he could reverse it. He did not. Imani's name was cleared before either woman's consequences were announced. 3 days after the hearing, Elliot asked Imani to meet in the empty ballroom. The punch table was gone, but a faint violet mark remained in the grout. He offered her a new title: Vice President of Employee Protection, reporting directly to him with authority across every Wren property. Imani read the proposal once and returned it unsigned. A protection office controlled by the owner is still controlled by the owner. Elliot did not defend the offer. Then tell me what would be independent. She placed 5 conditions on this table. Employee elections would be administered by an outside body. Ballot data and original records would never sit on Wren servers. Anyone preserving evidence in good faith would receive automatic protection from discipline. Staff housing could not be sold, transferred, or reclassified without a verified employee vote. And the Preservation Trust's findings would not be subject to Elliot's veto. You would be giving away authority, his counsel said. Elliot looked at the preliminary authorization he had signed without reading. Authority, without review, is what created this. Imani added one final line: the Trust's executive director must be selected by its independent board, not appointed by Wren Hospitality. Elliot asked whether she would accept the position if the board chose her. I will consider work that does not depend on your permission to remain honest. He signed the reforms first. Imani signed nothing. 6 months later, the Wren Employee Preservation Trust operated from offices beyond Wren House, funded by a binding endowment but governed by an independent board. Outside auditors managed elections. Original ballots never entered Wren servers. The staff residence had been placed under permanent protection, and Vale Row Residences LLC was dissolved, while the recovered funds remained under court supervision. Marissa Daphne and Conrad faced separate legal and professional proceedings. Imani had been selected, not appointed, as the Trust's executive director. In the evidence archive, her stained apron rested beside 2 sealed wine samples, Guest Cabernet and Wren Reserve. The labels recorded what the ballroom had tried to reduce to humiliation. One evening, Elliot arrived after closing without counsel, a contract, or a driver waiting at the door. He had implemented the reforms across every Wren property and accepted independent review of his own executive access. I'm not here to offer you anything, he said. I'm asking whether you would have dinner with me. Imani locked the archive and studied him. One conversation. Nothing you own gets to decide the second. Elliot nodded. She walked beside him, not behind him, leaving the apron where it belonged. Not as proof that a billionaire had defended a maid, but as proof that she had protected the record before anyone powerful decided to believe her. Marissa believed power meant turning a uniform into permission to mock command and humiliate someone before a room trained to follow her smile. Daphne believed paper could make cruelty look procedural, as long as every signature device and altered record pointed toward the employee with the least authority. Elliot's failure was quieter but no less real. He did not forge the proxy, change the votes, or order the wine poured. He signed before reading, delegated without limits, and delayed after Imani warned him, because protecting the gala felt easier than stopping the deal. Imani did not win because a billionaire finally defended her. She won because she photographed Seal 846, preserved the paper ballots, protected the folio, separated the two wines, and refused to let public humiliation break the chain of evidence. She also refused a future that remained beneath Elliot's permission. The stained apron proved more than who poured each glass. It proved how quickly regret appeared once power changed hands. Marissa and Daphne regretted the wine only after they learned whose signature they needed. But when regret begins only after consequences arrive, is it remorse or simply fear?